What's up everyone, Michael here with the PC overview for Cyberpunk 2077, a game so hyped it was basically guaranteed to disappoint a whole lot of people. But there are legitimate reasons to be disappointed in the Cyberpunk launch, and no, I'm not just talking about people that expected a different product entirely or content that didn't quite make it into the final product, but rather, the game is just outright incomplete. Not only are large sections of the story cut into montages, and there are definitely shortcuts made, and there are several NPCs that are kind of mentioned and you never actually even get context to, but the game is just an outright buggy mess. I haven't been able to experience more than 10 minutes without running into some visual bug, AI weirdness, or just missions outright bugging out, and even soft locking my game. I had a mission to where a lady was supposed to be following me, and thanks to an audio bug I could hear her just like she was right next to me. However, when I got to the end of the mission, it said to wait for her, and she never showed up. Ah, the wonders of early access. Oh wait, this is supposed to be a full release. Thanks, suits over at CD Projekt Red. I'm sure forcing your employees to go through all that crunch and hell was definitely worth your shitty launch. But let's actually step back for a moment and be fair for a moment. Everything in Cyberpunk on all those issues could definitely be fixed in the future. So at the time of recording, which is a few days after launch, the game is in a buggy mess and I strongly recommend waiting. However, underneath all those bugs and all that performance issues that we're currently having is a wonderful game. It actually has a lot of great storytelling to have, and while it's not revolutionary or new or gonna change the industry, it's a great story-based RPG. And although the RPG elements are pretty light, if you like story-based stuff, this is actually a really good experience, and I imagine that in the future they're probably going to add more and more content to it, which is going to be great. They've already announced free DLC and paid DLC, and they wouldn't release paid DLC without actually fixing the game, because if they did, well, nobody would buy it, because currently everyone's pretty disappointed in the launch of this one. Even though people are enjoying it, I doubt most people are going to stay that long because the bugs just make it not a particularly great game to play outside of the story, which is super unfortunate because the characters are fantastic. The world they built is actually really freaking cool. It's really cool to walk around this cyberpunk world that's over the top and just in your face. But yeah, I don't plan to finish this one anytime soon. I'm gonna wait for a few patches. So we're just doing a PC overview today. We're gonna be talking about performance, a lot of the settings and stuff like that, and then we're gonna get into my early impressions of the game, and then we're just gonna leave it at that for a while. And then maybe later I'll come back to it after a few patches, but chances are that I'm not gonna do another video. So this is basically what we're gonna get. Now, let's go ahead and get into it. We're here on PC, so I definitely want to go and look at the settings menu because that's what we do on PC. We like our settings menu, but before I go in there, I want to kind of put out a warning for people that are also thinking about getting this on console, because some people might see that the PC version is having issues or whatever. Unfortunately, the PC, even though it has all these performance issues and people with 3080s, for example, are even struggling to run the game in certain cases, even on low settings, because the game is just not optimized to actually use GPUs properly. Super frustrating. Now, there are ways to kind of fix that and stuff like that people have been working around, but it's not working for everyone. But if you're thinking, oh, I still have a console, I'm going to play it on console, that's a terrible idea, because apparently on console, the game is struggling, even on the newest ones, are struggling to reach 30 FPS. And this is not even like a new gen version. There's not even a next gen version aside from the PC launch. They only have versions for the Xbox One and the PS4. And those versions on their home consoles, as in the Xbox One and the PS4, the base versions, it's struggling to even reach like 20 FPS in most cases. And apparently the average frame rate is around 20, which is abysmal. And it even drops below 15 FPS. And some people are even reporting that it could even get to single digits in certain scenarios later in the game. So I do not recommend getting it on console, because even the next gen consoles that just came out trying to run the old versions in compatibility mode, which is supposed to work perfectly fine, you can get it playable, but it's still struggling to reach 30 FPS. It's a higher resolution, looks less blurry, but it is not recommended. So if you're thinking about just picking it up on console, I strongly recommend either waiting for a bunch of patches or just outright ignoring the console version entirely. And I think PC is probably where the best version is going to be, because we actually have a lot of scalability in the game. They just need to optimize the game so it can use it. Anyways, let's go ahead and go into the settings. Now, because of the length of this video when I was recording it before, it was dragging on for too long. There are a ton of settings in this game. So I'm gonna be skipping through a lot of stuff very, very quickly. If you want a full rundown for like accessibility and things like that, then feel free to check out the description, which I'm gonna link an unlisted video that's kind of cut up. It'll have my previous recording that actually had like the full video and stuff like that, my full script. However, we're gonna be going through a trimmed down version in the full video here, and then we'll talk about my early impressions. So hopefully hopefully it kind of balances out. So if you want that type of stuff and that in-depth discussion that I usually do about all the settings and stuff like that, that video is there. But let's go ahead and quickly go over a lot of this types of stuff, and then we'll talk mostly about the graphics and video stuff as well as the sound stuff, which we'll start off here. We'll just go left to right. So we got the dynamic range. The studio reference is what I prefer. It has a nice balance between large and low dynamics. However, you can change it to headphones, TV speakers, small speakers, boost low and boost high. I know a lot of console players like the boost high because a lot of home speakers aren't generally good at the lower frequencies, and it's a lot easier to hear at a distance if everything is on a higher frequency. So you don't get this system to where it's like everyone's talking really, really quietly. And then, you know, an explosion goes off, and like boom, and then your entire house shakes and blows up. So, you know, it can help with that type of stuff. However, I actually want to praise them real quick on their sound balancing, which is actually really freaking good. However, there is a bug in the game to where things are just playing at weird volumes and stuff like that. However, it is confirmed that it is a bug and it is super, super annoying. So the sound balancing, there are multiple volume sliders, so it's super nice to have this. However, changing them is mostly going to be for personal preference. Now, the master volume would generally be what you customize for your volume. However, because of that bug that just makes it so it plays too loudly and stuff like that, I had to revert to Windows to actually manage the actual volume of the game, because otherwise I would just randomly hear an NPC that was super, super magnified loud. As in, like, I think I had it down on like 60 or 50%, and then like an NPC just felt like it was screaming in my ears. So I had to go to Windows to actually modify that. So yeah, that's a bug that needs to be fixed, but otherwise sound balancing is absolutely fantastic. There's some weird oddities in some of the voice acting here and there, which like has some quality variance, but we'll talk more about that when we actually get into the game and the bugginess of it. And then we got miscellaneous here. Copyright music was really nice if you're recording, but otherwise you'll want to have this off. And then subtitles. One thing about usability here is the overhead subtitles are really hard to read. However, there are certain ports to where it's going to use these subtitles no matter what, because there's an auto translator in the game. Like, there's actually an augment in the game, which is really, really cool, and it translates other languages, and so you get them as you're progressing through the game, and then it'll actually translate what certain NPCs are saying in real time, but it only changes the text, not the audio. So you're gonna have to deal with these, so I still recommend customizing these options. However, these options only affect the cinematic one. It doesn't seem to affect the overhead subtitles, which is super unfortunate. Hopefully they add settings for that. Now, if we get into the controls, we can actually look at the sensitivities and stuff like that. You can actually customize the controller vibration, which is super nice. Personally, I haven't liked using the controller in this game. However, there are actually a lot of options, such as the dead zones. And if we scroll down here, you can actually see that there's the first person mode, which has obviously the inverts, which you also have on the mouse as well. You also have a zoom sensitivity, which is super, super nice. I've ran into a few games lately that don't have that, and it's super irritating. So I'm really happy that it's here. But you actually have show advanced options for the controller, and you can actually edit the curves and the delays. Now, I'll show a short clip from when I was streaming and I tested out the controller for a few seconds, and the delay on default settings is massive. That is awful. So what I went in here and actually zeroed all of these out, and it's much, much more responsive, and it's basically immediate. So I recommend going into the settings, turning on advanced options, and turning all these off. But one thing I do want to mention here is the bonus is basically when you max out the stick, it'll actually give you a boost, which makes quick turning really, really nice. Personally, I don't like it. There you go. And then you have responsive curve. Recommended is like their own balance, and then you have raw, which is linear. And then you have sensitive, which the lower your stick is, the more it affects it. And then as it gets to the edge, it's going to affect it less. And then dynamic is the opposite. So I just wanted to mention that real quick because a lot of people don't know what that is, and I feel like it's worth the full video. But yeah, otherwise, there you go. And then you have third-person cameras as well, or the third-person camera controls, which only affects vehicles at the moment. I don't think there's actually a third-person camera, so that's basically vehicle camera controls. And I've been playing with the camera in first person when I go into vehicles anyway, so there you go. Now, getting into the key bindings, which is the other bit of the controls, you can rebind mostly everything. You can't double bind, which is a little bit unfortunate, but more unfortunately, there are certain actions that are missing, and there's certain bugs that kind of make it so that even if you rebind a key, it can still affect things in very specific ways. Like, I think somebody was mentioning that they switched the toggle crouch, but now I haven't experienced this because I don't use the toggle crouch, but C is also the skip button. So if they're skipping dialogue, their character will crouch, and then also they rebound it, and for some reason, when they hit the other crouch key, it still skip the dialogue in one of the cutscenes. And so It's a little bit buggy here and there with some of the rebinding, but it seems to work for the most part. There's only a few things that I've rebound, but for the most part it works. However, stuff like the interact key is missing. Stuff like the reverse camera isn't working properly. It's supposed to turn the camera around so you can see behind you. However, it just works as a reset camera for some reason. So their actual like internal variables isn't working properly, or maybe that's what it's supposed to do. It's named improperly. Either way, when you're in first person, there's no way to look behind you when you're in a car, which is super, super annoying. And then we actually get into the languages as well, which is actually part of the sound. I kind of skipped this part in my script, apologies, but I only have the English audio. I don't know if that's based off of region or if there's only English audio. However, you do have subtitles in a bunch of different languages, which is super, super nice. So there you go. And it also affects all the interface stuff as well. And then when we get into the gameplay, I'm not going to talk about a whole lot of these, but we do have aim assist, and the aim assist is separate in the melee and the ranged one. I don't know if aim assist affects anything other than ranged combat. It's weird that it's not called ranged combat, but I guess that's just oversimplification, I guess. But it's nice to have these separate because some people do like it for melee combat but hate it for ranged. So it's really nice that they have it. It does default to on though. So if you play on mouse and keyboard and you want to disable this, or I guess controller, I normally don't use it on controller either because I use raw inputs. But yeah, make sure to go in the settings and turn these off because they are super, super annoying. But it is really snappy and it works really well. And you do have a light mode and a standard mode, and you can disable the snap if you really, really dislike it. But I actually like when I'm using the controller and it's snappy if I just want to play something casually. But if I'm trying to play more hardcore, I normally disable these. And then you get weapon sway, which you can actually put on the camera or the weapon, which is super nice. And then adaptive camera, this is going to be like stuff that shakes up and stuff. That's important for accessibility, which is why I end up mentioning it. But there we go. And then you get performance. This will actually go into the graphic stuff, but the crowd density actually affects gameplay. I found that medium is a happy, well, medium. So medium just has a good density and it doesn't affect gameplay too much, as in you mostly want to play on high just because it has a lot of NPCs and it kind of affects the gameplay somewhat, but NPCs are also super annoying, so you put it on medium, and that seems to be a happy point for me, as in there's not too many NPCs that I'm just going to randomly ricochet a bullet off and kill randomly and then have cops just spawning in front of my face, which happens. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, if you put it on low, the world looks empty, and then a lot of the NPC interactions are just not there. So keep it on medium if you possibly can, but you could turn it down for performance reasons. Slow HDD mode, I have no idea what this is because I play on an SSD. So there you go. Third person camera. For the camera mode on the vehicle, I leave it on low because it feels more actiony, but you can turn it on high if you're used to more retro racing. And then I wish this kind of had like a first person mode customization as well, because when you're in first person, the camera is really, really low. So that's a bit strange, but whatever. And then you have the tutorials, skipping dialogues, the nudity sensor, which is super nice for people that don't want nudity in their game. I know Americans are really sensitive to this. I don't think most people will care, but do note that even if you turn this on, it's still going to have a lot of things in the game that are super, super sexual. There are like strip clubs everywhere. There's like borderline pornography and stuff like that. All this does is remove certain advertisements in the game, and it censors up other ones, and it makes certain animations not play, and it makes it so your character can't be nude. They just wear underwear all the time. So yeah, it's a nice feature to have, but it doesn't make the game family friendly. So this isn't like a toggle 18 plus mode or anything like that. It's just if you don't want nudity in your game, you can turn this on. And I feel like it's more about making it so that people can stream the game without having to worry about that type of stuff. And then analytics is just sending anonymous data. Now we'll talk about the interface real quick. There are a bunch of things you can toggle on and off. Now I have a few things disabled just for the sake of spoilers, and I have hints disabled because I don't want them showing up while recording because they're super annoying. But do keep in mind while we're going through gameplay, I'll warn us a little bit later, but there can be spoilers that pop up just because of the way the call system works. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully I can edit it out if it does, but I'll try my best. And then you have some accessibility stuff like colorblind modes, which I don't actually know how effective these are. They're not just the filter, they're actually like custom UI elements. It doesn't change like the main menu and stuff like that, and it doesn't affect the subtitles, which some people have complained about, so it can cause issues. But most of the colors in the game are safe for most types of color blindness, so that's kind of nice that they at least tried. So hopefully they improve it in the future for those people that are colorblind. I apologize, my friends who have visual impairments. And then there's the damage numbers and stuff, sticky numbers, hit indicators, threat and damage indicators, which there's a certain effect in here to where you have damage only, which is the red one, and then you also have the blue one. This affects gameplay because the blue one is basically if bullets are whizzing past you, it'll actually show where somebody's attacking, which is super, super nice because sometimes in these games, it's really hard to tell where you're getting shot from. So those blue indicators are really obvious and really easy to like pay attention to. However, because the entire UI is red, the damage ones are red, just like, you know, like we've become accustomed to, but because the UI is red, they're really hard to read. So hopefully they add like a color thing or maybe swap the colors or something like that. Like it's really hard to read when you're getting damage. And as a result, it's really hard to tell when you're taking damage. I've learned the the actual damage indicators, but you have to like actively look for them. Otherwise, you just randomly die and you're like, what? What happened? Because, yeah, that happens. You don't actually know you're getting shot sometimes if you're not paying attention to it. So, yeah, that's a little bit bothersome. Crowds on minimap, it's super annoying. I have it off. You can turn it on if you really like that, but it does affect performance. All right, now let's get into the meat of this, the performance, the bugs, and stuff like that. Now, I'm going to skim over most of this menu, and then I'll talk about it as we get into gameplay stuff, just so we're not sitting in the menu for 30 minutes plus or whatever. All right, so in here, we actually got a monitor selection and a VSync option. Now, this seems to only show my Sorry, get a drink of water real quick. I'll probably cut that out. Anyways, it only shows the settings. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm too lazy. But it shows my monitor's refresh rate, which is 59.95, so it shows 59. And then you're able to set it at increments of that. I believe if you're on a higher refresh rate, it'll show the higher ones as well as these lower ones, but I am not 100% sure. So it might cap it at 60, although most people at higher refresh rates don't bother with VSync. And then you have a maximum frame rate, which allows you to actually cap your FPS. Now, my game kind of struggles. I'm only on a GTX 1070 and a 6700K i7 CPU, which isn't weak by any standard. It's still kind of expensive, but it's not like super powerful. It's not like a new GTX 3080 or whatever. I've been trying to get a new GTX card, they're RTX cards now. I've been trying to get a new graphics card, but again, they're just sold out everywhere. So yeah, it's kind of hard to get one. So I've been doing the best I possibly can with everything, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we get into the graphics stuff. But you're able to cap your frame rate all the way up to 240, which is super, super nice. I don't know how effective it is. I don't know if it causes like micro stuttering because I'm not running at 60 FPS all the time, but I haven't noticed any micro stuttering. It's mostly performance issues and stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then we got the windowed mode. So you got windowed, you got borderless window and full screen, as you would expect. Personally, I play it in borderless, especially since it's nice for recording. You got the resolution. This caps out at my 2K monitor, but it does show other resolutions as well. Now, do keep in mind, if you're not playing in 16:9, I think you can customize this in the actual configuration file, but if you're not playing in 16:9, it can add black borders, and there are currently glitches with the black borders to where you can't see the UI because it covers up the UI, obviously, and it doesn't dynamically adjust, and there's no way to customize the UI and like where it goes. That's another issue I would really like to see in this game, is having a customizable UI space, like being able to make it smaller or whatever, especially for ultra wide, because it just puts it in the corners of the screen, which is really hard to read on ultra wide. But those black bars don't always disappear when a cutscene ends, and during cinematic scenes it stays there even if you're actually playing, so you can't see stuff like your health bar and things, which is apparently super, super annoying, and I can imagine that's true. So if you're not playing in 16:9, know that there's going to be some weirdness. You can also end up getting clipping in certain animations and stuff like that, but for cinematic stuff, it's just going to add black bars, and that's to be expected. You can't expect them to design every single cutscene for ultra wide because it would also affect everything else. So yeah, it's kind of a compromise that we have to make. HDR mode, I've heard reports that this doesn't work. I'm not playing on an HDR monitor, so I don't really care. But yeah, so if you're playing with HDR, apparently it sucks. So that's unfortunate. Hopefully they'll patch it in the future. Now we'll actually get into the graphic stuff. Now, like I said, I'm running on a GTX 1070 with a 6700K i7 CPU. So I don't have the strongest specs anymore. Like, it used to be pretty good, and most games it can play pretty well. However, this game has some particularly bad optimization, as in people with 3080s are currently still struggling to run this game properly, as in they have to drop their settings too, and some of them have realized that even if they set it on low, it's not properly utilizing their GPU. So there's certain settings in here that I had to max out to get it to work properly, and the presets do not reflect this. And the presets are basically, if you set it to low, obviously I'm not going to touch it, because if you change it, it automatically changes all the settings and saves it. So I'm not going to touch the presets, but it has a low, medium, high, and ultra. And basically what it does is, like, if it has a low setting, it'll just set everything to low. And if it doesn't have a low setting, it'll just turn it off, or medium, whatever the lowest one is. And then medium is the same way. It'll just set medium, and then high, I'll just set everything to high. It's terrible. It's not actually optimized for like a low, medium, or high-end machine. It's just like, oh yeah, these are medium settings, and it doesn't work at all whatsoever. Also, keep in mind, if you change your graphics settings in the game, you'll want to relaunch it, because there are currently a ton of bugs that if you change certain graphics settings, it will actually negatively affect your performance, and it can cause visual bugs. Now, they've been fixing some of those in the early patches, and they've actually made a lot of the things that I had during the stream fixed, which is really good, but they do exist, which is super annoying. But you got field of view. You can actually make this higher than 100% in the configuration file. However, I kept mine at 100 because that's basically what they seem to find the happy medium is. because when I set it to 105, I started noticing a lot of clipping, especially in certain cutscenes and stuff like that. Though most cutscenes will actually limit your field of view for it, but some of them don't. And so I saw a lot of clipping on that, and stuff like getting into vehicles and things like that would show me like clipping through the shoulder and things like that. And I'm only on a 16:9 monitor, not an ultra wide, so I can't imagine how bad it can get. But yeah, you can actually put it all the way down to 70. I know some consoles games like to go all the way down to 60 or even 55, which would make me throw up, but 100 is reasonable. Normally I play on 105, but it's enough to not make me nauseous, which is good. And then you got film grain, chromatic aberration, depth of field. They're all blurry as hell. Depth of field isn't terrible, but I don't like it, so I have all these off. But I do have like lens flares. They're pretty nice, but obviously they're not realistic, so if you want realism, turn this off. But it looks really cool with all the neon signs and stuff like that. Motion blur, it actually looks pretty cool with all the neon signs, especially when you're driving fast, you're going through certain cities and like turning around and stuff like that. So it's a nice effect. It does affect performance though, and I have this off. Now we'll talk more about the sort of issues that I had with performance. Now here's a bunch of graphics options. I'm not going to go over every single one. I have that extra video if you want to end up hearing a lot of that, but there are a lot of options here. However, very few of them actually affect performance. I got tired after about 2 hours of fiddling with these settings and finally finding something to where the game would finally utilize my GPU. In order to get the game to utilize my GPU, I had to turn level of detail onto high. If I turned it on anything lower, it wasn't utilizing my full GPU's power, which means it was running at 30% or 20%, which was abysmal, and it was dropping my frame rate. I was trying to stream like that too, and I'm like, why is it doing this? And I couldn't fix it. However, now that it's running at high, it's using my full GPU, and thanks to the initial patches, it's fixed up a lot of those bugs that were happening to me in the stream, so it's been a lot more playable. And so basically, if you're having trouble running the game, actually try turning this up and then turn everything else down, and it might actually affect your performance quite well. Now, there are a bunch of settings in here, but the major ones that actually affect things the most seems to be cascading shadows and your volumetric fog. These two are the biggest hitters when it comes down to performance. Now, for the sake of just kind of getting as many frame rates as possible, I'm trying to get it to run at 60 as constant as I possibly can. It's not quite meeting it. A 1070 isn't quite strong enough yet. It needs some optimization patches and it'll probably meet it. It should, but it doesn't. The game doesn't look pretty enough to actually warrant dropping below 60, but here we are, we got it. And there is one setting that I do recommend having on that you can turn off, which is screen space reflections. If you turn it off, stuff starts to look like Play-Doh. They use the screen space reflections to actually add a lot of texture to things. And so it basically turns off like specular shadows and things like that if you actually disable this entirely. So you'll want this on. So for example, the roads, they look like Play-Doh if you turn this off, but when you turn them on, they look like roads. So you'll want this on low. Even if you're struggling to run the game, you want to have this on just so the game keeps its atmosphere and its visuals. But if you're at the last desperation, then feel free to turn it off. It's just keep in mind that things are going to look like Play-Doh. So there you go. And then you also have ray tracing, which I don't have an RTX card, so I can't speak to. Some people say it makes the world of difference. It makes the game look entirely different. And then others are just like, yeah, it barely affects anything, and they just turn it off for performance. So it's personal preference, I think. And then DLSS apparently actually affects frame rate pretty dang well, but you require an RTX card to use it. However, you can also use the dynamic resolutions. So I have the static one enabled because I was doing the previous recording, but the dynamic one, basically you can set a target frame rate and then target the minimum resolution, and basically what this does is it renders it like 65 would be 65% of your current resolution, but it keeps the UI at its nice crispness, which is good. So that's a really nice feature for performance. Personally, I don't like it because I don't like it blurring my screen. And then for the static fidelity though, this is what you'd want to use most of the time, because this one just makes it so, like, let's say you set it at 80, it'll always be at 80 rather than trying to dynamically adjust it based off of your frame rate. So if you want to have the game on full screen and you want the UI to be crisp and clean, use this one to actually affect your resolution. It actually has a better performance impact than just changing your internal resolution. So that's nice, and it goes all the way to 50%, which is actually kind of drastic, but yeah. Personally, I don't use it because I find that my game runs well enough for me to play it at my native resolution, and I don't want the game to look super blurry because it already looks blurry enough. All right, now we'll talk about more of the bugs and issues. Again, if you're looking for all of these specific things, I have an extra video that goes over them a little bit more in detail in the comments thread. But let's go ahead and continue my game. We're gonna go ahead and load, and we're gonna go into one of these. Yay, I made a bunch of saves for this specific video. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and cut over. Okay, so real quick, after looking at the footage and like going over the script and stuff like that, I realized I skipped a few things when I was actually talking about the gameplay and stuff like that. I normally don't script a whole lot when it comes down to PC overviews. When I get into my impressions part of it, it's normally just completely unscripted and whatever I want. But I feel like for the sake of completion, because I did talk more about it and a lot of people are concerned about it, the gameplay difficulty. The game is a little bit easy on normal, like piss easy for me anyways. And I feel like it's a bit of a pandering setting, as in like, oh, well, people that aren't very good at video games are going to want to play on normal. So I amped it up on hard, and hard mode feels like what the game should feel like. So if you are looking to end up picking up the game and playing it, you're going to want to play on hard mode if you're actually somebody who wants to play a game that has some substance to it, really. Because on normal difficulty, I just found it extremely easy. Though if you are playing on normal, it's a little bit easier to kill enemies that are higher level than you, but you can also get hit like a truck and just have nothing happen to you. So yeah, I've been playing it on hard, so a lot of my impressions of the gameplay is on hard mode, and I did find I was having much more fun when I was playing on hard difficulty. Now the hardest difficulty, I feel like I just die in one shot from everything, so that wasn't particularly fun. But if you're looking for a real challenge and you want to try like playing a sneaky playthrough after the game's been patched a while, then play on the hardest difficulty. Currently there's too many bugs for that to be reliable. Like you can just randomly get hacked from out of nowhere, like through a wall, and then you just die. Like, because you can't do anything about it. Normally, they're only supposed to be able to hack you when they have sight. Even in the tutorial, it tells you that. But if you ruin their sight, they can still hack you anyways, because the game's just buggy as all hell. So anyways, just thought I'd add that in here. Sorry. All right, so I've loaded up the game. The game actually loads extremely quickly, so I technically didn't need to do a fade out there because it was basically done loading immediately. This game actually has some really nice dynamic loading, though it does cause a lot of pop-in, and it can cause stuttering on lower-end machines, but on an SSD, it seems to run perfectly fine, so there's that little bit. But here we are in gameplay. This is the main character's little bachelor pad that you get. You can end up going to sleep, or you can go and, like, take a shower, for example. But yeah, generally speaking, there's a lot of stuff that you can end up doing in this game, and so I'm not going to be able to cover all of it. Don't think of this as like a full review. Oh yeah, I'm taking a shower with clothes on, which is a little bit strange. We'll go ahead and look in the mirror so you can see my character. Woo! Reflections. The reflections only show your character if you're in this menu, which is a bit strange. I can see my hands. I wonder if that's actually the same hands, but we can go ahead and scowl at the mirror. Yeah, it's just a thing to say, yes, you are a character. So if I go ahead and exit the mirror, we can actually go ahead and look at my full character in the inventory screen. So there she is. She's got hot pants because they're the best stats I've got. If I go ahead and look at them, it's got legendary. It's got the bully, increases crit chance. I like that. Or crit damage, actually, not crit chance. But yeah, and then you also got various customization options and stuff like that. I've only been holding on to stuff that I really like. So just to show it off, since we're talking about it now, we're going to my stash over here. You can actually see I have a bunch of stuff that I've held on to that I really like. Mostly t-shirts. I don't need all of these though. This one is pretty lame, so I'll go ahead and transfer these and we can dismantle them and stuff like that. But yeah, so there's actually a lot of outfits in the game. I know that some people have had some issues with it. Oops, I didn't want to go crafting. Inventory and then backpack. Yeah, menus are a little bit of a mess. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, I actually don't mind the system. I actually think it's kind of nice. It kind of makes you mix it up. And if you actually want to keep the stats on an item, you can actually go into crafting and you can dismantle stuff pretty easily. There's some issues I'll talk about a little bit later with that, but you can actually just go ahead and go to upgrades and then upgrade stuff. So let's say I wanted to use this gun for longer, for example. I can use materials to do that. However, if they are rare, they will require rare components, which means you need to find other rares and dismantle them, which is rare. It's kind of a grindy system, but I actually don't mind it too much. And I like the idea of finding new stuff and kind of having that contemplation of like, hey, do I want to do this or do I want to do that? Also, why is there a cat bowl in here when I have no cats? Well, I guess I have a robotic thing. I guess maybe that eats it. I don't know. There's obvious bits to where there was supposed to be a cat or a dog or something that you could get, but it's just got cut from the game. Hopefully they add it later. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the game. Now, in terms of my recording, for recording this section of the video, I have limited the capture frame rate down to 30 FPS because it was tanking my FPS a little bit too much. I'm not able to run this game particularly well on my GTX 1070 and my 6700 K i7 CPU. So it's an issue. Also, yes, there is falling damage. If I fall from here, I will die. So just in case people are curious, yes. What's going on, sir? I'm leaving.
I live right upstairs. Gotta get going.
Bye. Anyways, yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the more issues with the game and stuff like that, and then we'll talk about what it is, or I guess I should talk about what it is, and then we'll talk about the issues of it. So, a lot of people are getting into Cyberpunk not necessarily understanding what the game is. Let me Let me go to the entrance. There we go. Another bug. Literally 10 minutes. I cannot go 10 minutes without running into a bug. My God, it is so frustrating. Anyways. So what is Cyberpunk? Like, a lot of people are like wondering what it is, because apparently the advertising was everywhere. I'm pretty good at avoiding hype, so I really didn't pay attention to most of the stuff. I watched a few gameplays type of stuff and like, oh yeah, that looks cool. Proof of concept, basically. I know that trailers don't always represent the final product, so I watched it once they ended up having actual gameplay out, and I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, I saw bits and pieces of the game, to where I'm like, oh yeah, that looks cool here and there, but mostly I avoided all the trailers and spoilers and things like that, which is kind of nice for the game. Also, here's the city. Absolutely gorgeous, even on the lowest setting. It is really cool looking. No, it's not revolutionary graphics like some are trying to claim, but it does look good, and it is one of the few games where we actually have a cyberpunk city, and it looks great. Like, it is absolutely fantastic when you start walking around it and stuff. But yeah. So a lot of people are walking into this game expecting it to be like a sandbox, expecting it to be like a Grand Theft Auto or something like that, and it is not a sandbox. Unfortunately, the AI sucks. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but the AI is really awful and not set up to be a sandbox, and there's actually not a whole lot to do outside of missions. Like, there are plenty of missions the game gives you. Like, normally you're getting a bunch of phone calls. I disabled the texting UI and stuff like that. I'm just gonna go into like one of the streetways and stuff like that so you can see like the back cities and stuff like that. But yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous to walk through these cities, but it isn't really a sandbox game. And while it's cool to walk around these cities and like look around, there's not a whole lot to do in them. There's not a whole lot of shops that you can go and like, ow, and there's another glitch. The body just disappeared. Interesting. I don't think that was supposed to happen, but okay. Hey, you. I'm just fading through NPCs. But yeah, there's tons of glitches. Like, that guy just fell, and he's supposed to be dead here, but since I looked up and he went out of my field of view, he just vanished. Yay! Not even 10 minutes. Sorry, I'm gonna rag on it. It's really hard not to point those things out. But yeah, so this isn't a sandbox. It is a story-based, like, story-centric RPG. Yes, there are things to do in the world. Like, there are random events that'll pop up to where, like, the police need things, people are getting mugged, so you can help them out, or you can mug them. And then there's like random little like shops and stuff like that that you can go to, but there's not a whole lot of them, and their inventory is just random and kind of boring and limited. Like, you can find BDs, for example, which are called brain dances, effectively VR sessions, and they're supposed to like be a thing. I'm not gonna like spoil what they are and all that, but they're like a critical part of the story. You can find them and you can buy them, but you can't actually view them outside of the story and side story stuff. So yeah, and like stuff like the clubs and things like that, like all the doors are like locked, or they have authorization limitations and stuff like that, just to make it so you can't go into buildings and things like that. And the world just feels a lot more restrictive than it possibly should. And now we can talk about the AI, because the AI is absolutely horrible. So if I shoot a random NPC, these guys will just run for a small amount of time, and then they'll crouch, and then they'll stay crouched forever. And then police will just start randomly spawning around. Actually, these guys are running for quite a while. Maybe it's a bug that they end up sitting around, so because these guys are actually running. Nice! Maybe they patched it, and I just didn't see. But yeah, those things there, they weren't there before. If I turn around after actually getting a few more stars, so if I go ahead and shoot at these guys. Yes, I know. I'm trying to get the police officers. I'm just gonna start shooting people. Actually, an automatic rifle would probably be better at this. I'm on the lowest star you can get at the moment. Oh, I'm gonna die. I'm on hard mode, so I'm gonna die really easily. Anyways, one of the problems with, I'm sure I'll have B-roll that I can throw up if I didn't throw it in the intro, because it was actually hilarious to where like I crashed, accidentally ran over a civilian because of it, and then police just randomly spawned in front of me. But police just spawn next to you. Like, I was inside a building and there was a story quest where I had the option to like murder somebody who was not a good person. And I decided to murder that non-innocent person, but because they didn't break the law, I basically, I want this one, because like I wanted to murder them just for the sake of story and progression and stuff like that, and the pathway that it gave me, police started spawning inside the building right next to me as soon as I shot him. So yeah, the police AI is terrible. They also don't pursue you. If you drive away or run away or whatever, they actually won't follow you. They'll just spawn after a set period of time. So you just get a certain distance away and they just forget you exist. So that aspect of the game kind of sucks. And NPCs are constantly glitching out. And in the combat, the combat AI will also glitch out randomly. Like I had a person standing in front of me just shooting me, and then he stopped shooting me and just started walking away as if nothing was happening. And it was a bit frustrating. There was a certain part of the city I wanted to go to, so I'm gonna go ahead and load back into our apartment. But yeah, the AI is just abysmal. Like, normally I can overlook it. Like during the main combat and stuff like that, you can overlook it. And a lot of the AI bugs, a lot of the AI issues, I'm sure are just bugs or issues or things that aren't working properly. Like that has to be the issue because there's no way they made the AI this bad. But it might just be really, really buggy. Like for example, the NPCs running away that far, normally they just crouch and sit there forever. So I'm starting to think maybe that was a bug too, but I had never had the experience to where they actually ran away a good distance. Normally they just run around a little bit and then just crouch and then they stay there forever and don't move. And like cars, for example, will randomly get stuck in the streetway. So like you'll stand in front of like an NPC car and they'll just stop, and sometimes it'll get stuck and the AI doesn't know what to do about it. And then we get into the bugs. My God, is this game buggy. Now, to talk positively for a second, the game is good. Like, underneath all of these issues is a really good game. Like, the story and the characters are really, really good. Like, yes, they are kind of tropey, and yes, they have some issues with them, but they are really fun and interesting, and I really do enjoy it. Like, I want to keep playing because I do enjoy the story, and the gameplay is actually really fun. I know it's been kind of popular to kind of rag on the gameplay and all that of the game, but it may not be like the best shooter ever, and it may not be a very in-depth RPG, but combining all these elements together is really, really fun. I like going into like a new heist or something like that, or a new scenario, or helping the cops, you know, take down some criminals and all that. And I like going through the combat and playing through. I like using the various different types of weapons, although there are some finicky things like that, like trying to call people and stuff like that. I just hit the wrong thing. Hopefully I didn't show spoilers. But, you know, using the weapon wheel, for example, is extremely touchy. Like if I try to unequip a weapon, like I'm moving my mouse like not even an inch and it's just skipping over it. There we go, I got it. So like unequipping a weapon is super frustrating. I couldn't even find out how to do it in the stream. Oops, I accidentally pulled out my weapon. Sorry, I'm trying to talk and use hotkeys that I'm not familiar with. Stop pulling out my weapon! My God! I want to put it away. There we go. But yeah, and then sometimes when you're calling a vehicle, it just won't go there. And I had never seen that before. That was interesting. It couldn't decide which way I wanted to go. I also don't want the radio on. Also, the radio randomly resets. It seems to only like apply for like if I save after doing it before getting back on the vehicle, which is a bit strange. So yeah. Anyways, God damn it. I'm terrible at controlling this the vehicles with the keyboard. But yeah, underneath all of it is a really good story, and it's fun and interactive. It has a really long wind-up time, though. Like, if you're not into story-based RPGs and you just want to play as a sandbox, I mean, the game itself is already not a sandbox, just in the way it's built. Like, if the AI was better and there was more random events and more things to do in the world, this game could easily be a fantastic sandbox game. Like, the mechanics are there. They're just not good enough to be fun. So if you're just wanting to play it as, like, a sandbox game, it's not quite there yet. But the potential is there. So like with updates and maybe fixing some bugs and stuff like that, there could actually be like some real potential and stuff like that. And I know I'm breaking the law, but I don't care, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so there's a good game underneath this, and I've really enjoyed my gameplay of it. It's just, it's so frustrating, especially when I go through a mission and just stuff bugs out randomly. Like, there'll be a mission, for example, I was talking about in the intro, to where it just bugs out and I can't progress and I have to restart. And in that mission, like, I tried saving and reloading to try and get it to just work properly, and I tried just, like, going out and, like, going back in and trying to do all these different types of things, but, like, none of it worked. It just stayed bugged out. So I had to load before I even started it, which included a brain dance, it included a long cutscene, it included a dialogue tree, and it included all this nonsense, and I had to replay through all of it, and it ended up being 2 hours to do one mission that should have taken me 20 minutes. It was insane. So yeah, it's just really annoying, and stuff like that happens all the freaking time, and there's bugs and glitches everywhere. Now, to be fair, most of the bugs that we found here, like this vehicle spinning in a circle, or the UI not working properly when I was staring at the UI for the elevator, random cars spawning and flipping over and randomly exploding like we just saw in front of us. That wasn't supposed to happen, but stuff like that, it happens all the freaking time. everywhere. It is insane that it happens so much. Hi, person that's just randomly sitting there and not running. Is that an enemy? I guess the cops are upset at me. Whatever. That cop randomly dislikes me. They happen all the time. Most of them don't really affect the gameplay that much. Like, they're not game breaking. So, like, most of them, it's just gonna be like, okay, I just have to redo this mission. And, you know, to be fair, in my 20 hours of play or whatever, I've only had it happen like 2 or 3 times. But that's enough. Like, I've had stuff to where, like, the dialogue kind of skips over and, like, I can't see the dialogue, for example. Or, like, the NPC just stops talking, or the NPC disappears and it just skips, like, a cutscene. And I'm just like, that's super, super frustrating. I'm just driving around showing the cities and stuff like that. We'll get into some actual combat and stuff like that later. Actually, we can do it now. So, like, glitches happen all the freaking time. Whoops, sorry. I'm used to my interact button being E and R for other games that I've been playing. I'm gonna go ahead and quick save. But, like, yeah, bugs happen everywhere. And while most of them don't affect the gameplay, they are super freaking annoying. And they happen all the freaking time. So, while you could still technically play through the entire game. Uh-oh. He was upset at me. No, die. Wow, that's a really strong enemy. I'm gonna die. Good thing I quick saved. If they have a skull above their head, they're too high level. They're too high level for me, so they're gonna kill me. But yeah, the bugs and glitches everywhere are just annoying. Like, they are super, super annoying because basically everywhere you go, you're running into them. And that also doesn't even mention the fact that performance is absolutely abysmal. I've had to do a lot to get this game to run properly on my GTX 1070, and quite honestly, with how good this game looks, it shouldn't take that much. Like, it doesn't look good enough to warrant it. There are games that look a lot better than this that run perfectly fine on my machine, and a lot of people are complaining about optimization issues. What level are these guys? I don't know actually how to check their level. I just know that there's a skull above their head. Whatever. There's also a lot of missions. So, for example, a lot of stuff just feels unfinished. So, for example, if I go into my inventory here and I go into crafting and I decide to craft some rifle or pistol ammo, I have no idea how much ammo I have. So I'm just sitting here crafting. I don't know how much this gives. I don't know how much it does. If I hover over it, it doesn't have any sort of UI that tells me in or anything like that. I just have to go into my inventory, and I don't even know if I can see it in my inventory. I've never even actually tried to check my inventory for ammunition. Does it even show it in the inventory anywhere? I don't think it does. I don't think it actually shows the ammo count in the inventory at all, aside from when I'm in the overworld, I get off my vehicle and I pull out a weapon. That's the only place I can see my ammo. Why is that? I don't know. It's an oversight, and there's tons of them, especially when it comes down to crafting and the customization and just weird things everywhere. Like, and there's custom things or things that happen all the time too. Like when I get off my bike, sometimes the hands aren't on the handlebars and animations glitching out all the time. Like, this stuff is insane. I'm actually gonna fight these guys. Hold on. I'm gonna go ahead and F5 it, and then I'm gonna use a grenade to, is this a flash grenade or an actual frag grenade? I don't know, I'll find out. I'll throw another one too. Here, have some more. But you can kind of mess around with the environment and stuff like that, which is fun. But like, just stuff feels incomplete. Like, I have no idea what level these enemies are. I don't know how difficult they're gonna be. Like, yes, I know that there's a skull, which means they're gonna probably kill me. But like, at the same time, I don't know how difficult they're gonna be. Now I'm using the environment because it does scale damage, which is good. Oh, hi, I'm dead. They just decided to one-shot me. I should actually find some sections. I'm gonna actually go to something that I can actually get some real gameplay from in a second. But yeah, the game just has so many unfinished qualities, and that's not even talking about the main story that just feels incomplete in a lot of sections. The starting section, for example, they advertised it as being this 10-hour-long thing, and they had made the excuse that they were just going to ignore the text for a moment. I'm just gonna find one of these, so I'm gonna go ahead and do this one. It says, actually, let's do that one. It has cat in the name. I like cats. But yeah, so there's certain sections in the game that were just like cut entirely, and for that beginning section, they're like, oh, well, people didn't like the long intro or whatever, and I feel like it actually hurts the game quite a lot. Like, this game has a really long ramp-up time, as in, when you start off the game, you're stuck in this one section of the city. Yes, you can roam around, you can do stuff, but like random events don't happen and stuff. I think I was supposed to turn there. I wasn't sure though. I didn't look at my mini-map. Don't run over the fat guy. Okay. But Yeah, and it just kind of cuts everything down into a montage, and then it kind of ruins the atmosphere for the next section of the game to where it just makes it feel not proper. Like, I didn't pay attention to my audio. I didn't know there was a radio station. I'm trying to play without the radio on. The music is also okay. The cutscenes like to use rap, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I don't think rap screams Cyberpunk to me, so I just kind of don't like that. But yeah, it's a musical creative choice that they decided to make. But you can customize the music everywhere else in the game, and I prefer the rock stations because I'm a rock-ahead banger. I don't know why I said it that way. But yeah, the story in sections just feels incomplete. Now, hopefully content updates in the future will actually fix a lot of the bugs and they'll fix the incomplete stuff. They did mention they're gonna have free DLC. So hopefully that free DLC includes like that entire intro. Like hopefully they decided that that entire intro was decided to kind of be like that intro and stuff. Like that would be really, really nice because I'd really love to play through those sections. And there's later sections that seem like they obviously cut. Like there's a lot of NPCs they mentioned that you never get to see. Also, sorry, I'm just kind of traveling around the city a lot. I've been trying to talk and I didn't think to actually go to a place where I could have real combat. I thought I was going to find one of those random events that I could do, but I didn't realize that part of the city was really high level. There's nowhere in the game that actually tells you how difficult that section is outside of side missions and cutscenes that actually kind of hint at you at that. Whee! You can actually get some pretty good air, by the way. Some people mention that there's no jumps, but there are actually a lot of jumps on the side streets and stuff like that. They're just not in the main city. But yeah, just thought I'd mention that. But yeah, overall though, do I recommend this game? Because that's one thing that people are going to be really talking about. Oh, there's a random cutscene to where, or not a random cutscene, a random bug to where those cars explode. They're not supposed to, but they do. Yeah, that doesn't always happen, by the way. You can save and load here and reload over and over again, and sometimes they'll explode and other times they won't. It's a little bit strange. But yeah, so here's some police officers and stuff like that. They're fighting these wanted criminals, so we can go ahead and assist them if we decide we want to. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out my rifle here, and we're going to get some gameplay. Nope. Grenade. I can't pull out my grenade, so we're just going to toss it. Booyah. So we're going to go ahead and show off some gameplay here. But the gameplay is actually pretty fun. Yes, it does have the tanky combat and stuff like that to where, like, enemies are a little bit bullet spongy and stuff like that, but there is the RPG element, and you can actually get quite a bit of damage. If you're fighting enemies that are around your same level, like I'm doing missions that just say moderate, the enemies actually die pretty quickly, and it feels much more natural. It just seems like the scaling is a little bit off. Like, there are really, really difficult enemies for, like, no reason whatsoever. And so, yeah. You can also choose to, like, take out the cops here if you really, really wanted to, and you can get extra rewards for it, but, the cops actually give you rewards for helping them as well. And you get to loot the dead bodies, so I decided to do that instead, because I'm a good guy. What? Wait, why are you shooting me? Why are you enemies? You're not supposed to be enemies! What the fuck? Okay. Well, that's a bug. I think enemies are hostile because I was doing a thing and got attacked by I did an illegal thing, and sometimes that carries over into your save, so I have to reboot the game to actually get rid of that, which is a little bit unfortunate. Now, there's also hacking and stuff like that. There's a lot of really interesting stuff you can do, but I'm going to go ahead and make this person blind by rebooting her cybernetics. There's also a hacking system. I'm just not going to show it because it's a little bit annoying. But now she's blind, and she has no idea what's going on. And now, oh, yep, there we go. Okay, now they're both blind, so I can sneak up behind them and snap their necks. Goodbye. And now she can see again. But yeah, anyways, yeah, there's hacking and stuff like that. Oh, you want to be alive? I'm going to leave her alive because I don't want to be cruel. But normally I kill them. But yeah, so you can incapacitate them and you still get the rewards. For some reason, the cops are really upset at me. I don't know why. But yeah. But the gameplay itself, like, I really like the combat. I know people have been ragging on it, like, oh, I don't like bullet spongy enemies, or oh, I just can't do this, or that doesn't exist, or, you know, oh, I don't like the way the guns control and stuff like that. But overall, I find it fun. It's kind of arcadey, it's kind of weird and glitchy in times, but it's been overall pretty dang fun. Like, I've really, really enjoyed my gameplay sections of it, at least when it's not bugging out and glitching all over the place. So yeah, it's a hard game because, like, underneath all these layers is a really good game. Oh, a cop spawned there, or like a police thing spawned there. I need to start driving. Like, the only way to get away from police officers is if you're driving. There is a hunt there that I could do. But yeah, the gameplay has stuff that you're not gonna necessarily always like. Like, the RPG elements are pretty lightweight in a lot of areas. Like, the dialogue trees aren't really all that in depth. Like, there's not a lot of places you can end up going and, like, kind of making stuff feel different. Like, if I go through and I make one dialogue change, like, it might get referenced later and there might be some minor gameplay changes, but most of the time, your dialogue choices don't really matter, and it's more about getting different, like, dialogue into your thing, and you can get different lore and stuff like that. I'm gonna turn off the radio again. I keep forgetting that it's on. My volume's turned down, so I don't notice unless I, like, pay attention for a second. And I'm just used to playing the radio, because I play with the radio, because some of the music, again, pretty nice. But yeah, a lot of the dialogue trees and stuff like that don't really affect a lot. There are certain dialogue trees that do, but they're displayed in yellow. And so, like, one of them, for example, oops, I had the option to, like, kill someone or something or like that. And then they didn't show up. Like, if I would have killed them, they wouldn't have showed up later in the story and stuff. So, yeah. Oh, is that guy wanted? We can end up taking him out. I'm just doing the random event stuff now. But yeah, and there's a ton of missions and stuff like that. Like, you'll see here, you get side jobs, which actually act as, like, side stories and stuff like that. But then you also get gigs, which these are basically your random events. So they'll tell you, like, oh, hey, there's a target over here. Or, oh, hey, this person is, like, breaking the law. Or we need you to contact this police officer or something like that. And that's what these gigs are. They're basically mercenary work, and they range in difficulty. Currently, all of them say moderate to very high, but they actually get more and more difficult as you progress in your street level, which is your street cred up here. And so that levels up. There's a lot to level up. So when you start leveling up, you actually get your character, and you can go into here, and there's multiple skill trees. Most of these are just kind of boring passive increases, like increases attack speed with blades. Yay! And they're kind of boring, but there's a few that do end up kind of modifying your gameplay enough that it makes it interesting. So for example, there's one in the technical tree, the engineering, that makes it so that you are immune to your own grenades, which can kind of augment the way that you play a little bit. But most of these are just passive bonuses, which are nice, but they're not great. So yeah, a lot of them are just damage bonuses or just things that automatically trigger, or making it so your crafting's better, or making it so that you can get more stuff. For example, like data mining makes it so I can get more Euro dollars, which is the in-game currency, and stuff like that. Also, one thing I should mention real quick is no, there is not microtransactions. I saw some people saying there's microtransactions. There is not any microtransactions in the single player game. Apparently in the multiplayer game, they're going to be adding microtransactions. But yeah, it's a lot of the skill tree is kind of disappointing, and a lot of leveling is kind of disappointing, but at least it's there, and you get different perks and stuff like that as you're progressing through each one. As you do them, you actually level up. So if I go through crafting and I start crafting a bunch of rifles and stuff like that, you'll actually see my crafting level is increasing up there. You do have to craft like rare stuff to actually do stuff. So if I want to go ahead and like upgrade stuff, what's something I can upgrade that I actually want to upgrade? I guess like this jacket, for example, sorry. I can now go ahead and upgrade it. And this is one thing that's actually pretty nice, because you can actually upgrade stuff that you want to keep using, but your resources are pretty dang limited here. One thing that's kind of weird though is I haven't really found a lot of uses for like actual money in the game. But yeah, here we go. You can see I just leveled up. Yay! But certain things do have like a level up limit, and I think it's based off of the stats. I don't necessarily know. There's probably a hidden tier system, which I wish they displayed, but they don't. So there you go. And there's a lot of different equipment too. Like there's a variety of guns. Like there's certain types of guns that are kind of limited, but you do have like different types of pistols. For example, you have like a standard pistol, then you have like a semi-auto pistol, you have a revolver, you have an electric pistol, you have one that shocks people, and you can get special effects on them and stuff like that based off of their rarity as well. Like this one, it has a extra attachment that makes it so it eliminates vertical recoil, but it also has extra headshot damage, and it has a bleeding chance to where enemies start bleeding. And then you can get stuff that sets them on fire, you can have them get shocked, you can make them blind, and you can get various effects. So it's not like super in-depth. Like there's not like a giganto like system to where it's great, but it is in-depth enough that it's interesting to like interact with. It's more or less one of those things to where it's like, you know, I'll be playing for a little bit and then I'll decide like, oh, I wonder what new equipment I've gotten and stuff like that. So he's wanted in this city, so I'm gonna go ahead and solve this problem of him being wanted. I'm basically playing as a mercenary. Oh, hi. Ah! Don't shoot me, I'm innocent! Alright, they might be mad at me. But yeah, overall, like, I find the game to be satisfying and interesting to play, and I really do enjoy it, but the bugginess and the glitchiness of it, oh, I'm overweight, so we can start dismantling some weapons. There is some things where it's like, Z is, dismantle. Oops, it just reset my UI, which is another thing that happens. But yeah, so every time I dismantle at the bottom, it's scrolling it to the top. It's not supposed to do that, but it's going to. Yeah, there's a lot of usability errors in this game, and there's a lot of glitches, and it just needs a lot of development time. And I can see in a few months it being a really, really good game. Like, I can see it being really, really fun, and a lot of the mechanics are there. They're just not there enough, and the bugginess just makes it frustrating to play through. But I am finding myself wanting to come back to it. And I've only been 20 hours into the game, which some people are saying the main story is only 20 hours. Now, I have been doing side stories, screwing around, messing with technical bobble stuff. So my experience is going to be a little bit longer than other players. If all you want to do is play through the main story, it's only going to be about 20 hours, people are saying. And I did notice there are multiple trees that you can go down, and there are multiple ending type stuff that you can go through. So there is some replayability, and making another character was actually fun. On my stream, I actually made another character that was actually all about sneaking and stuff. And I found that fun. Oh, hey, you're still alive. That's good. Can I heal you in any way? No, because this game's incomplete. But anyways, there's actually a lot of, like, interesting stuff in this game. And it's still worth checking out, and it's still worth playing through, but I recommend waiting. You're not going to miss anything by missing the beginning part of the release. Like, you're not going to miss this buggy release. They're not going to, like, remove content or anything like that. I know that some people, there was the epilepsy warning, which they have basically fixed now. It has an epilepsy warning properly in the game now, and it is displaying, they changed the display of a certain thing. Sorry, I'm used to another game to where tab is to hide my weapon, sorry, or put away my weapon and pull it out. No, I wanted it. Oh, well, that was a weird animation. It wasn't supposed to do that. But yeah, it's like, it's just not worth putting up with all the bugs and the incompleteness. Like, because when you're playing through the story, even if you just want to play through it for some of the story stuff, you're going to run into situations to where the story bugs out. Like, there are story bits to where there was, like, dialogue that I missed, and I had to reload a save because it was important dialogue. Or there was a part to where I was supposed to go through a BD, and they started talking about things that made no sense. Turns out I just hadn't finished that section of the BD yet, but it just decided to trigger it anyways. And, ooh, there's a cop signal over there, which means there's people to help. Woo! I think it's down there, probably, I would assume. So yeah, ultimately, my early impressions of this game, the gameplay itself and stuff like that, like, it's got some promise. It's not complete yet, and a lot of the AI stuff is probably just from being buggy. Is it down here, or no, was it up there? I don't know anymore. Oop. I broke a bottle, and I broke a bunch of stuff. Also, when you save and reload inside buildings, there is a chance that everything will just randomly explode. I found it hilarious the first time until it started hurting people, and I found out there was a save I couldn't load because it would kill an NPC. And then the cops obviously blamed me for that. I can't go over there because there's barbed wire. Dang it. Fine. I just won't go do the thing that I saw. So yeah, ultimately, my final verdict at the moment in my early impressions of it, I haven't finished it, so I don't consider this a full review, and my impressions normally aren't a full review, but the game's too buggy and incomplete. Like, it is just unfinished, so I don't recommend really picking it up yet. And on console, it's absolutely broken from what I've heard. So it's a game to wait on. It is a game that you want to absolutely wait on. Also, there is swimming, by the way. There's nothing to do in swimming, but you can swim, and there is a breath meter and stuff like that. You just never do anything with it, and there's nothing out here. Again, there's a lot of sections in this game also that feel incomplete. Like, the game is just outright incomplete. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this game, and yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, I know a lot of people are disappointed because they were expecting the world from this game, and I'm not gonna fault people for believing that, because the advertising definitely said it would be the world, and it's not. It never was going to be. It was gonna be focused. It was gonna have a thing that it was gonna focus on, and it was gonna do that. And for that, it is a story-based game with light RPG elements, some light sandbox elements, and some really fun characters and some really fun gameplay. And they achieved that with a really, really great world. And I'm really, really impressed with a lot of what they've done. It was obvious that a lot of care and passion went into this game. However, I can't recommend it in its current state because it quite simply isn't finished. Also, before somebody asks, yes, there are fast travel points. I'm just wandering around because I can. I don't want to do anything story related because even the like little side stories have a lot of story and they're actually worth playing through. They start off really, really slow. It has a long ramp up time, but yeah, you can see that these little blue points are fast travel points. So yeah, man, it's rough because I want to play it. Like, I legitimately want to play more of it. However, it's so buggy and it's so incomplete that it just constantly drags me out. So I'm gonna have to force myself to like stay away from the game for a while, come back after a few patches. There are plenty of other games for me to check out and play, and so that's what I'm gonna be doing. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and comment, and subscribe for more content like this one. This ended up being much more complete than I ended up thinking it was going to be, but that's how it goes sometimes, so I'll probably rebrand this as an Impressions Reviews. But anyways, if you like this style of content, make sure to check out the channel and check out the other types of stuff. I'm kind of in a transitional period to where I'm not really doing a whole lot, and I'm kind of working on other types of stuff at the moment, so there's not a whole lot of videos coming out. But if you do like reviews, make sure to let me know in the comments if there's any sort of feedback you want to give me, or any other comments you want to make sure about Cyberpunk 2077. And if anybody else has gotten the game, I would love to hear what people are having issues with, because there are a lot of fantastic bugs in this game, and I've had some fantastic stories to share about all of the issues I've been having. So yeah, there's a lot to say about this game, and I could go on for a full hour and actually talk about the full in-depth review types of stuff of this game. I've played enough of it to really kind of get a good gist of it, but I kind of want to cut this a little bit shorter than usual and just kind of do whatever I want to do, and just to talk about it, because that's ultimately what I'm doing here. This is a PC overview. It's not meant to be a whole impressions review or whatever, so don't take this as like a final verdict, but it is a warning. It is an absolute warning that things have bugged out, and I've heard that people are even having glitches all the way up into the ending of the main story as well. Like, they had the main cutscene that has like a long cutscene beforehand that you had to play through, and they had that bug out, so they weren't actually getting the climax of the game. So yeah, it's a disappointing game overall. So generally, just wait for it. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna go ahead and drop into some trash. Owie. Hashtag grenade time. Wow, that did 0 damage. I feel like it's fitting that we ended this on a bug, because that should have killed me. God damn it. You can also check out our gaming Discord, the broken chat box in the comment description thingy. I forgot to advertise it. Yeah. Oh, I almost got stuck back here. Man. This game exhausts me.